Hey guys, thanks for joining me tonight. I'm losing light, but I wanted to put out a quick video on how to build a better Altoids tin. Maybe you call yours your personal survival kit. Maybe you call it your Altoids emergency tin, whatever. Guys, the name's not nearly as important as to the idea that you have good usable resources on you if you find yourself in a, backcountry emergency of some sort. Now, I recommend you always have a day bag with you, and I do also, to keep me safer when I'm in the backcountry if I have to spend a night or two out there and I wasn't planning on it. But I will say this, guys, should you be separated from that better kit, from that day bag or whatever, you really need to have a backup plan. And that's going to be the clothing that you're wearing, having the appropriate clothing on, as well as the stuff that's in your pockets. And that's where an Altoids tin comes in, the way I look at things. So I choose to keep an Altoids tin with me. It's got lots of usable gear that helps keep me safer when I'm in the backcountry. It doesn't matter whether I'm fishing, if I'm hiking, if I'm running machines, it's with me. And I actually, because I live at 9,500 foot here in the Rockies, and I'm in a very remote area anyway where we've had problems in the past, I choose to, go ahead and just EDC that kit. I everyday carry it. Last year, we were evacuated out of our house for 9 days because of avalanche threat. When I came back to the property, I had my Altoids tin in my pocket while I was plowing snow because it makes sense in this environment to have good gear should, for whatever reason, I, be separated from better resources. So I try to do that. I would encourage you to also, like I say, definitely if you're in a backcountry. But beyond that, I've been building these for about 25 years at this point in time. I really think that there's a right way and a wrong way to build them. And with that said, I believe that um, I'm very comfortable with my kit. So should I be stuck out here tonight, with just the clothing I'm wearing and the stuff in my pockets, and I got another jacket off camera, but I'm pretty comfortable with that in general. I'm not necessarily nearly, I'm not comfortable at all with somebody else's kit. So, it might be worth kind of looking at what I'm doing and just, food for thought for you so that maybe you start building yourself a better kit. And I'm not saying that everybody else is making a bad kit. That's not it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to be, arrogant or anything like that. But there are examples. You don't have to look very far before you start looking at kits and you start thinking to yourself, well, if that's all I had out here tonight, how useful would the resources that they put in there be to keep me safe overnight? And, if it's full of random odds and ends and zip ties, and I'm not knocking zip ties, but, those zip ties aren't going to do me a lot of good in this situation if I'm spending the night out here tonight. So, that's kind of where I'm at. I've been doing this for a long time. I'm going to go ahead and start giving you the little parameters and ideas that I use to build a better kit. If it helps you build a better one, then that's awesome. And that was my goal all along. First thing I'll say, guys, is you really have to understand your uh, survival priorities. I don't have time to do, a whole video on at this minute on what your survival priorities are. This is probably going to be long enough. But go back and look at your rule of threes. And, what you really need to understand, if I break it down in the simplest terms, is what tends to cause us problems out here will be exposure related issues, getting too cold or too hot. Normally it's too cold in my environment. Um, that's an issue. And that's the one that, puts a lot of people out of the game. The hikers and the hunters that get lost that, don't come back safely. It's because, exposure related illness. Um, After that, things like hydration are high on the list. Beyond that, we start talking about, other issues, and, your signaling and your navigation are definitely factors in that. So for those reasons, you really need to understand what your priorities are. You're never going to build a good emergency tin or survival kit if you don't understand what your survival needs are. So, number one, know your survival needs. Number two, though, is going to be go ahead and have, I always put my um, priorities in my kit first, and I focus on my priorities. So anything I'm putting in that kit, guys, is really related to keeping me from exposure, keeping me in good hydration, my signaling, my navigation, and these things that are going to directly affect if I'm stuck out here overnight, as opposed to the random odds and ends that people sometimes put in a kit like this. And, I think we've got it all wrong. What we normally do is we look at a tin that big, we think to ourselves, I need to put a lot of stuff in there because I got a lot of things I need to address. And I just think differently now. Now I'm saying, no, I've got half a dozen different priorities, and I'm going to fill that kit with everything I need to meet those priorities. So, I've seen everything from chapstick and zip ties and tea packets and tea packets, as well as sugar for the tea packets, as well as butterscotch mints or, candy mints in tins like this, along with bobby pins and safety pins and, all kinds of other stuff. And I'm not knocking any of that stuff. That stuff's handy. And if you think you need it, by all means, throw it in your day bag. But that's not going to be the stuff that keeps you safe overnight. Um, a lot of people are going to sit there and say that, well, that tea is a morale booster. That piece of candy is a morale booster. And I'm just going to disagree with you wholeheartedly, guys, because if I'm stuck out here tonight, that candy or that tea is not going to change the outcome of anything. Whereas if I choose to, leave out that butterscotch piece and instead I put 6 extra Tinder Quick in there, that guarantees me that, I've got 6 or 12 fires, from those Tinder Quick that I just threw in there to really affect keeping me safer through a short-term backcountry emergency, whether it's one night or 3 nights, 4 nights. The best morale booster, guys, that you can have is knowing I'm in a terribly lousy situation here, but I'm probably not going to freeze to death because I know I can start fire because I've got, great fire starting gear, and I chose to leave out the butterscotch piece and instead I put those 6 Tinder Quick in there. So I don't got to worry about that even though I'm in a lousy situation. And, you know, I'm in a lousy situation, but I chose to leave out that tea packet and instead I put in, a couple of days worth of purification tablets in there. So I know that, you know, while I'm in a lousy situation, that I'm probably going to be safe for a few days. Guys, that's the best morale booster you can have, is knowing you're safer. And I will always trade my comfort and my convenience items for knowing I'm going to be safer, or doing everything I can anyway to be safer through that short-term emergency. So, that's rule number 2. Rule number 3 is, or I say rules, and I keep throwing that term out. They're just ideas that I implement on myself when I'm building my tins. But my third thing that I try to do is I avoid micro kit. And by that, I mean this, guys. I don't want to be dealing with micro kit to solve massive problems. I want big boy toys to take care of big boy problems. So by that, I mean this. A lot of people want to put 2,000 pieces of random gear in there. So they'll go ahead and throw their little, ferro rod that's just that big in there. They might throw in the little spark wheel instead of, something bigger. They might throw in a couple of matches instead of a Bic lighter. And I just do things completely different. I don't throw in scalpels or razor blades instead of a pocket knife. Because if I'm stuck out here and I don't have better gear and I'm just going off of what's in my pockets, I need a good cutting tool. And that doesn't mean a razor blade. Those things are going to dull quicker. They're going to chip easier. They're not intended for this environment. I might have to be, they're definitely not going to handle well in your hand. And, they're very limited in their application of what you can do here because you're using them in the manner they're not intended to be used. And I complicate things significantly if I cut myself because I'm using it in a manner it wasn't intended in this backcountry emergency, and only make things that much worse. So carry a full-size pocket knife. I don't want to carry as much gear as I can, guys. I want to carry the best gear that I can put in this thing. I want the best tools in there. So for that, I carry a full-size pocket knife. And I do that because outdoorsmen for, how long now have been carrying, a full-size pocket knife to do all their carving tasks, all their cutting tasks, all their skinning tasks. So, they've been doing this for a couple hundred years, relying primarily on a pocket knife. I carry a full-size pocket knife in there. Same way with, I carry a full-size spark rod, ferro rod in my kit. I don't use the little, the little one, and I don't use the little, spark wheel or that sort of thing. Because if I have to go into the wood line to, um, make my fire to get my tinder together on natural materials that are damp and whatever, I want more heat and more sparks. So I use, like I say, big boy toys to take care of big boy problems, and I avoid the micro gear. Now I do ask myself, would a bigger piece of gear, would a bigger knife or a bigger whatever, spark rod or, whatever, uh, would a bigger flashlight do more for me? Because I want to carry the best gear that I can. Sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes the answer is no. When we start talking about things like a light, this is my everyday carry type light. If I put that in that tin, it's going to take up way too much space. So I choose to use my little Streamlight Nano for carrying in my tin, because if I tie it off around my neck, I can still do simple camp chores with it. I can still follow a trail with it in an emergency, and it just doesn't leave that big footprint in the tin. So I use that for that purpose. Same way with, if I am using if I want my fire starting gear, I'll throw in a mini Bic lighter, because a mini Bic lighter will actually do anything that the large size Bic lighter will, only it takes up less space. So as long as I don't have a mechanical issue with that thing, it's still going to get me hundreds of fires. And, so I'm constantly asking myself, would a bigger tool or a smaller tool be better for this, and evaluating my equipment as I go. The next thing that, guys, that I see people doing all the time, and I've done it in the past, that is problem is we'll shortchange ourselves. And by that I mean this: if something's important to you, have plenty of it. Tinder's important, guys. Have plenty of it. Matches are important. If you're going to go with matches instead of a Bic lighter, carry plenty of matches. If if you think fishing gear is important to you, carry plenty of hooks, carry plenty of fishing line. I'm not saying that I've never carried less stuff than I should have. I understand that we've got a finite amount of space, and we're really kind of trying to shuffle things around to make sure the important stuff has plenty of it, and other stuff we're going to have to not have as much of. But I don't carry 5 matches and call that my 5 matches plus a little spark wheel and 3 pieces of tinder, and that's my fire kit, because I understand that I've just set myself up for disaster. I carry a full-size Bic lighter, a full-size ferro rod. I carry I don't carry 3 or 5 pieces of tinder. I'll carry 10 pieces of tinder, and some of those are waterproof, so that no matter what's happening, I should be able to get fire going. If I'm going to carry a fishing kit, then I make sure I have 30 fish hooks instead of 5, because with 30 fish hooks I can lose a couple and still not sweat things, as well as I can make fish traps. I can make a trout line or something should I need to. So these are just a couple of considerations I would definitely put out there to you. Beyond that, evaluate every piece of kit, guys, every piece of gear going in your kit. If you're putting your Barlow knife in there, think to yourself, would I be better off with a scalpel? No, I wouldn't be. So that was the wrong answer. Would I be better off, though, with a bigger piece of gear, maybe a Swiss Army knife with a saw and an awl and that sort of thing? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But I just kind of second guess every piece of gear that I'm putting in there, and really, it's priority driven. Guys, I'm going to kind of sign off now. Those are a couple of things that I do that might help you build a better kit. And my only goal in this is that you actually start building a better kit, that more people do, so that they're safer with the gear that they're carrying in the backcountry. Thank you so much for taking time out to visit with me tonight. If you got anything out of this, please go ahead and hit that like button. Feel free to subscribe. I've just kind of gotten on YouTube, and I'm enjoying what I'm doing. If you might like some of my other videos, please go ahead and check those out. And then the last thing I would go ahead and say, beyond that, I really appreciate you guys taking, time out to check in with me this evening. Thank you very much, and I'll catch up with you a little later. Bye bye.